Up, everyone. There we go. Okay, just letting a few more people in. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Becky Smith, and I'm very pleased to be hosting this session for the English Association. The EA is a learned society subject association, which was founded in 1906 to promote, support, and defend the discipline of English studies. We cover all stages of education, from primary and early years through to secondary and further education, higher education and beyond, and we cover all parts of the discipline across language, linguistics, literature, and creative writing. Events like this one are made possible by the contribution of our volunteer speakers. So thank you to tonight's speakers. We have Suzanne Hughes, Margaret Bateson-Hill, as well as myself. I'll thank myself before I speak. Our members make it possible to keep these events free and open by paying their membership fees. So if you'd like to contribute to the national conversation about English and help support the discipline, then please consider joining us. It costs just £53 to support our events and campaigning work for a whole year, and you'll get access to a range of member benefits, including online access to all of the amazing journals as well. So let's get started with some bios. Suzanne, would you please introduce yourself and your work? I'm going to figure out if I can pin the speaker so that hopefully everyone can see your face.
Okay, well, I'll start. So my name's Suzanne Hughes. I work for Northampton Primary Academy Trust, which are 14 primary schools based in Northamptonshire and Buckinghamshire, actually. So we're probably due a name change. I'm a teacher, I feel, first and foremost. However, I've done class teaching, I've been an English lead to a deputy head, and now I lead for our trust, the English across the trust. Not only that, I also lead on the Royal Shakespeare Company work that we do, and I'm a visiting fellow for Voice 21, and I deliver on the National Professional Qualification for Leading Literacy, as well as a delivery partner for the Early Career Teacher Framework. So that's me.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. Margaret, can you introduce yourself and your work, please?
So I'm an author and a storyteller. I have published 7 picture books. There's a selection of my lovely picture books, including English Association, I Love You Because You Gave Me the Prize at Key Stage 2 Fiction for Masha and the Firebird. I've also written a dragon racing trilogy. This is book 1. But I'm also a storyteller, and I started really as a storyteller for Lambeth Libraries, taking bags of books to under 5s when libraries did that sort of thing. So I cut my teeth as an under 5s picture book storyteller. Then I discovered people told stories without books. So then I started telling stories without books, which I'm also going to be encouraging everybody to do. And then I thought, oh, I'd like to go into schools. And my children were just setting off to school then. I thought, I better write a book. So that's when I wrote my very first book, Lau of Dragon Mountain. And that opened all sorts of doors. Since then, I have told stories in libraries, schools, museums, everywhere from Brixton, where I live, to as far away as Moscow and Beijing. That was really fun. And I've told stories in my local playground, and I've told stories in Buckingham Palace. But at the center of everything I do is story, 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 story. That's me.
Amazing. What a fabulous introduction. Thank you. As I said at the start, my name is Becky Smith. I'm a primary school teacher, reading for pleasure consultant for schools. I do some creative arts practitioning using music, drama and the arts to kind of enrich the curriculum. And I'm the children's event programmer for Stratford Literary Festival. I previously was the learning and participation manager for the Times and Sunday Times Cheltenham Literature Festival. And I managed the National Reading Teachers Equals Reading Pupils programme. So that's us, that's the 3 of us who you'll be in, hopefully in safe hands this afternoon. So we're going to kick off. I'm going to hand back to Suzanne to start our discussion on the reason you're all here, an Oscar-winning performance, reading aloud in the primary classroom. Back to you, Suzanne.
Brilliant. Thank you, Becky. I've just got some slides to share just to go along with my presentation. And hopefully I'm not too much of a fraud this afternoon sitting in such esteemed company, but I shall do my best. So from the research, we really know it's clear that teachers and adults have a real power to influence children's reading lives. And that's my passion, that their love of reading will really impact not only their educational success, but also their health, their well-being and their life expectancy. So as Sonia Thompson from the St Matthew's Research School in Birmingham says, that it's so important that all of our staff really promote the love of reading and reading for pleasure, and being all lover of books is so important. So one way we can do this is through the power of reading aloud to children. And that's every day, not just at the end of the day, but through stories and poetry and non-fiction. And I really feel when I read aloud with children that I'm really responsible to deliver that in a way that inspires all of the children in my care. And I really have a sense of duty to the author, Margaret, it could be, or indeed the illustrator, to do a really, really good job on my delivery and sort of enthuse the children that I'm reading to. So I've looked at some work from the Book Trust and they've produced an article on how to read well, and they've identified 10 steps to sort of read aloud success. And I love a bit of alliteration, so happy with the P's. So we're going to have a look at some of those this afternoon and unpick them together. And I'll just give you a moment just to read through those. So firstly, I'm going to start with that purpose. And as Sonia suggests, we should really be reading aloud to children, particularly in primary education every day and at various times of the day and for lots of different reasons. So we really need to think about that precise purpose at different times. It could be story time, where it's really relaxed and we move to the reading corner, we're kicking off our shoes and laying back on a beanbag and just letting those words wash over us and listen to that story, luring them into that wonderful world of escapism, which I absolutely love. However, it could be much more focused. It could be focused on that learning objective where I'm actually modelling the prosody or a specific element of reading that I want to share with the children. So it could be that non-fiction text in geography, really based on that water cycle, which we're introducing a new complex concept and all that new technical vocabulary that we really want them to hear. So we're demanding them to listen in a different way, more carefully, whilst I hopefully read more like a geographer. So we need to have that clarity about what we want to achieve from that read aloud process. So hopefully, once I've got my purpose, I can really think about how I'm going to plan that all-important session. I need that text selection where I'm going to select that Goldilocks text that's just right. It's just right in length. It's just right in the level of challenge for the children, that semantic level for them. It's just suitable for them and that concept level and the words that I want to deliver. And I really might be thinking very carefully about my cohort, that I'm ensuring that they've got mirrors into their sense of reality and identity and belonging, or maybe they're windows into new worlds and exploring difference. I really need to think about that literary relevance as well. So it's not always just based on a topic or something lovely to read, that actually I'm really thinking about their next steps. And obviously most schools have that literacy spine where somebody or a group of people invariably have really unpicked, carefully considered texts across school. It's got to be well written and hopefully enjoyable, especially for the children, but also for you. And I've had teachers that haven't liked the text selection, so sometimes we just have to fake it. So we really must read that text aloud before we deliver it. And hopefully I shall learn a lot of tips from Margaret later, but actually let's learn from those experts. So some of the work I've done at the Trust is with Hearts for Learning on their Reading Fluency project. And they really understand how you can support yourself by text marking your text on that first read aloud, thinking where the pauses will come, which I know Becky will talk about later, but really thinking out how we can chunk and phrase the text to support their understanding, and perhaps adding additional pauses in some of those long sentences because we need to breathe. We might provide some emphasis on some vocabulary. Here are some of the ideas for text marking that you can do before you start your read process. So when you're doing your first read, you can definitely work out exactly where you would like to make those emphases, and it makes us more confident when we get to that point of reading. Here's an example of one of the texts that I've marked up previously, and it definitely helped that excitement for sharing with the children, and it was a really great session. The other thing that hearts do is the repeated reading. So I might not just read the text once. So if I've text marked beforehand, I can make sure it's akin to the first version, so we don't give all those different key messages, so they really understand how you've selected some of those areas. We've also do quite a lot of work with the Trust with the Royal Shakespeare Company, and they've supported us in really understanding how you get the text off the page and what they call on its feet. And you can try lots of different techniques to bring that text alive, which I know Becky will talk to us a little bit more about. So we've planned our performance, and it's really important to think about where I'm going to be. Am I standing? Am I walking around with the children, getting them to engage more? Am I sitting in the reading corner on that beautiful story chair? So I've prepared all my resources, props and puppets, hopefully, showing the pictures of the text, but I also need to prepare the children. I need to give them those clear expectations of what their role is as a listener or a really positive audience. I can help myself by making these into really clear routines so that they can set up to these really quickly. So this is what we do when I read to you in the reading corner. This is what we do when I'm reading to you in a reading lesson, or perhaps in a history lesson, where they might be thinking really hard. It's really important to ascertain as well, when can they ask the questions? There is nothing worse than getting to that dramatic moment and somebody's hand goes up. Can I go toilet? We've just lost that moment. So set up your expectations. During story time, it's really a good time not to refrain from going on to those teaching points. It's really hard sometimes not to, but just letting the words wash over them. And then afterwards, the only expectation from the children is to ask them those questions on their personal preferences, what they enjoyed, the bits that they really liked, or indeed didn't like. So it's really important to have that clarity over the expectations of them as the listener. Then for me, it comes to that important part of practice, that practice of reading aloud. In the past, when I've had children in my class that haven't got somebody to read at home, I've asked them to read to their soft toys, or indeed Spider-Man. That really needs to provide that audience, and it's the same for the adults. So you will hear me practicing, perhaps sometimes to the dog. Reading a text aloud is so different than reading in your head. That practice of physically forming the words and not getting tongue-tied. So that really links to the work that Hearts for Learning have helped with that text marking. But they also advocate sometimes sitting on your hands so that all the communication is through your voice, so you can practice those facial expressions and gestures. It also links to the work that we've done on the Early Career Teacher Framework, where the ECTs have that deliberate practice. So when you actually get into the moment in front of those 30 pairs of eyes looking at you, you really know what you're going to do when. Often we can practice out loud and think about different types of text. So it doesn't just have to be those fiction stories, but thinking about poetry and how we can think about reading in different ways depending on the mood or the emotional response we want to evoke in a listener. So we could practice in lots of different ways, in a round, line by line, expecting those choral responses from the children. Actually, it's really great. And I know we've got Margaret with us today, but in the 21st century, if you've got a great poet, you can actually watch a video on how they intended their poem to be read first, which is a great top tip. Obviously, we can also think about non-fiction. It can't be left behind. We really need to get children engaged in non-fiction text and really think about those children that perhaps just don't like fiction text, and there are some, I've met them. So you could think about how you could read a chronological text, but it could be in the form of a newspaper, in a news report, or a non-chronological text where you might think of it as a form of a nature show, or you might get enroll for diaries or autobiographies, because it really then can bring the text alive and engage those children in lots of different types of text. So we don't all find reading pleasurable or particularly easy, and it's harder sometimes when we're reading aloud. I've only met a very few number of teachers that don't like the performance, but hopefully the 5 Ps can really help and support us with that structure. And there might be some good role models that's in school too. So getting your P's right can really help that pleasure. And some of my most happy memories are sharing books with children, the power of that joyful shared experience. Getting that buy-in eventually for some of those harder to reach children is great. The joy of leaving them on that cliffhanger and really wanting for more. I love the moment as well when you get that feedback from past students that remember those really impressive dramatic pauses and the real joy of reading some of those texts, and you get to hear that actually that got them into reading. So as we know, enjoyment of reading is really important, and actually let's try and do our best to get it as good as we can. And I'm really looking forward to hearing about Margaret's storytelling as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Suzanne. There are so many takeaways there. I'm sure lots of people were. I was writing furiously. I'm sure other people were as well. So hopefully I'm going to build on that by kind of talking just briefly about the dramatic skills required for reading aloud. So with a lot of these skills, they're probably things that you might do naturally. I'm hopefully not going to teach you to suck eggs. I'm just hoping to make some of those things we do unconsciously a bit more conscious, so we can really reflect on where we're at with our reading aloud and where there might be room for improvement. So I'm going to kind of cover a few different things. I'm going to start with volume and pitch. So some easy things. Are you talking at the right volume for the environment that you're working in? Are you, paying attention to what's going on around you? I'm sure that you are, but thinking about, okay, the noise level has increased because somebody's now doing a group work over there or something's happening over here. Am I reflecting that in my voice? Am I adapting it for whole class reading versus individual reading versus reading in assembly or with a small group? And am I varying my volume when it comes to drama? So am I making my voice really quiet when there's a dramatic moment that I want the children to lean in for? Or am I being really loud as part of the characterization, which I'll talk about in a minute? Pitch. We all have our own accents. We all have our own natural cadence to our voice. Do you need to adapt yours to meet the needs of your audience? We know from lots and lots of research that younger children respond to those high-pitched, sing-songy voices. That's why a lot of us do it kind of naturally. But it's just good to be aware of, am I doing that enough? Could I do it more to really engage the audience? And again, can I adapt it for certain characters? Speed and pace. So as with volume and pitch, we all have a natural speed at which we talk. You can probably already tell, but I naturally lean towards slightly fast. And I'm always reminding myself to slow down and let people really hear what I'm saying. Maybe you do too, or maybe you're someone who's naturally got quite a slow and calm way of talking. I'm very envious of you. But just be aware of where you lean, because it can help you to listen to recordings of yourself, to maybe reflect on, am I going too fast? Am I going too slow? How can I adapt it? We want children to be engaged in listening to us. So we don't want to be racing through, missing those important details. And we want to take into consideration, the pace of the book or the poem or whatever we're reading. So and this is where kind of what Suzanne was talking about in terms of the pre-reading and the pre-planning comes into it. Where are you going to plan to speed up, to build towards this climax or a cliffhanger at the end of a chapter? And where are you going to slow down so that you're really kind of drawing in the audience and making them hang on your every word? We want to use the pace to really let them run away with the story, and it keeps it interesting for you, the reader, as well. There's nothing worse than kind of thinking, oh my gosh, how long to the next chapter, because I'm just so bored of reading it. You really want to keep that excitement in your voice, because the more enthusiastic we are, obviously the more the audience picks up on that. You know, and I'm sure we've all done that. I'm thinking about the next thing that I've got to do, but I do think the audience can tell when we're running through our to-do list of what's happening next. Punctuation. Do you pause at the commas? Do you change your tone of voice if a line is in bold? When you're reading aloud, the children don't necessarily have the text in front of them unless, you know, you've given them copies or you're doing it on a visualizer or whatever. If you're just kind of purely reading aloud, they need to hear the exclamation marks and the question marks and the ellipsis so that they can help to make sense of the story. And I think something that's really important to stress is that if you mess up, it doesn't matter, and you can always go back and correct. I did that the other day. Actually, I was reading Adventure Mice to my year ones, and I read the line really loudly and enthusiastically, and then read, "She whispered," and I went, "Oops, let's try that again." And I walked it back, and I did the line again, actually whispering. And again, you're modeling for them how to do their reading aloud well as well. You know, it shows the children they're not perfect, you're not perfect, and they don't have to be either. And also it teaches them, I think, that the words matter. So if it says whispered, there's a reason the author said whispered. It's helping you understand the character, it's helping you comprehend the story better, and you're modeling for them how to read and interpret the character as well. So coming on to characterization, now, as the title of this session would suggest, we are not suggesting that you need to give an Oscar-worthy performance, unless you really want to, unless you are so inclined. But giving a little bit does aid children's understanding of the story, and it can be really hard to follow if all the characters have a very similar voice. If the villain sounds exactly like the hero, or the talking mouse and the elderly lady all sound exactly the same, it's just hard to keep track of who's talking again if you don't have the text in front of you. And it's also harder to empathize with the characters if you can't really tell them apart. We need the kind of up and down and the sort of ever-changing cadence to keep us enthralled and excited about the story. You know, if I did this whole talk just sort of at the same pitch and the same speed, and I spoke in a very monotonous way, you would all have clicked off this video already. You would all be terribly bored. So maybe one character is always running, so talks really fast, or another might be a slow character. You know, you can try and copy that into your voice. You can also prep those voices ahead of time. So coming back to that pre-reading, that pre-preparing, if it's something that doesn't come naturally to you, or something that maybe you're just starting to build your confidence with, you can prepare them. You can practice and record yourself doing a few different attempts for each voice and see kind of where feels comfortable. Or you can just wing it in the moment and just have fun with it. A word of warning I will say for this is that, you know, don't start, if you haven't pre-read, don't start a very difficult voice that you won't be able to sustain for the whole book, because I'm sure we've all been burned by like a talking frog, and then and now I've realized they're a really big character, and we can't keep that going through the whole book. So do the pre-reading if you can. If you can't, just keep the voices sustainable for your own sake. Similarly, if there are accents or dialects in the book that you don't feel comfortable mimicking, use an audiobook or find a recording, find a way of showing what it should be like, at least for part of the story. You know, it's great for children to hear you having a go at things. It's also great for them to hear how it should actually sound. I think it's a kind of win-win situation if you do a little bit of both. And obviously do what makes you feel comfortable, because if you're uncomfortable and you're reading aloud, if you don't feel confident, the children are going to pick up on that, and they're not going to feel as confident with the book either. And giving just a try can sometimes just be really fun for you as well. The last thing I'm going to touch on is the kind of pupil participation element. So depending on the context in which you're reading, as Suzanne kind of already touched on, you might be encouraging that pupil participation, or it might be a time when actually they just need to be listening. You might be engaging a book talk, you might not be. There are so many benefits to just letting children sit and listen to a story in whatever way they feel comfortable. Some children might want to have their heads down on the table if they're at desks. Some children might want to lie down. You know, some might need to be fidgeting to be able to hear the story. Some might need to be doodling. It's up to you how you do it, how you make the rules. But I think never be afraid that someone's, SLT or someone's going to walk past your classroom and think, oh, they're just reading. You're not just reading. There's so much more going on, and it's so important. So do what works for you and your group. You should have some sort of plan or strategy in place for those interruptions. So what are you going to do if there's unfamiliar language? Are you going to have a system where you write a word on the board if you think the children won't know it and you come back to it later? Are you going to encourage them to ask, put their hand up and ask there and then? Or is that going to break the flow of what you're trying to do? Are you going to give them whiteboards and get them to write down any words that they hear that they're not sure about the meaning? There's so many approaches to it, but it just helps you manage those interruptions if you've had that plan in place ahead of time. Otherwise, you just run that risk of kind of lots of interruptions to the flow, leading to frustration, really, for both you and the children. Obviously, there are lots of times you want those interruptions. If you're reading for comprehension, engaging in book talk, we do it naturally. I think when we read picture books, we stop and look at the pictures and we ask, oh, what's this and what's that and who's this? And we do that quite naturally. But we can do that with novels too, and with non-fiction. Was there anything we liked about that chapter, or that section? Was there anything that puzzled us? If you're familiar with Aidan Chambers' Tell Me approach to book talk, that can be a really great place to start in terms of asking those questions. Is the book reminding you of any other books that you've read, which again, children will do quite naturally? All of these questions can deepen the experience of being read aloud too, and hopefully continue to build the relationship between you and your pupils, and boost reading for pleasure for everybody. Ultimately, as I kind of touched on, the enthusiasm and the effort that you put in really does come back to you tenfold. The more you are expressing an interest and excitement for the story, the more that comes across to the children, and the more likely they are to be like, can we read the next chapter? Or have that amazing groan when you have to finish. You want those kinds of reactions. So I think the more you put in, the more you get out when it comes to reading aloud dramatically. So that was a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but hopefully that has been helpful. I'm going to turn over now to Margaret Bateson-Hill to talk a little bit more about reading aloud from her amazing experience.
Thank you. First of all, yes to every single thing I have heard this afternoon. I was just going tick, 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 completely listen to all those things and do them completely. I set my scene before I came. I had my props already. And the other thing is, for me, is meeting the children. I'm not a school teacher, so when I go into groups, I'm a complete stranger to most of them. So very quickly, I have to really try and create a relationship between myself and the children. And very often I will do that by singing. And I like to have children, personally, I like to have children sitting on the carpet, on the floor, in front of me. Though I realize if they're in 4, 5, and 6, they probably would prefer to be on a chair. I still would prefer for us to be a group. Because for me, the relationship is, I'm the teller and the children are the listeners, but the story happens in this middle place in between us. And I spent a lot of time in a group watching the children, seeing how they're reacting, seeing how they're listening. Very often, if they're very little, if they're losing it slightly, I will sing a song. I like to build songs all through texts that I use. For the older ones, I'm very blessed with being given a lovely singing voice. And I'm very grateful for that because I rely on it very heavily. So and I'm just going to do it for you now because I really believe in treating adults like they're in a story time too. So when I go to older children, probably year 2 up or year 1 upwards, I've made up a little song and it has actions, because that's the other thing to really remember in our story times is that we have bodies that do things and can tell a story in their own right. I wish I knew more about signing generally, and I've been fortunate enough to be in a session where someone signed next to me, which is an amazing experience. This is my storytelling opening, and I like to set the scene to bring you all in, saying, this is special, this is story time. Often I put this normally on my chair. I say, I'm not sitting on a teacher's chair, I make a throne. I pop it on. You were talking about the story chair before. I like story chairs. So I'm going to ask you to do the actions with me, actually. So first of all, I want you to reach up. We're going to disappear off the top of our screens, I know. We're going to reach up and catch a star. Ooh. Next, we're going to sail the sea. So we're going to make our arm into a river and we're going to sail the sea. And now we're going to sit beneath the green leaf tree. This is the 4 elements. You may be picking this up. So we're going to make our arms into the trunk and spread out the branches. And the last one for fire, I'm going to ask you to cross your hands like a heart, but flicker your fingers like flames. Light the fire. We're going to put it on your chest in your heart. And now we're going to turn our hands into a book. Now my story's ready to start. And now I'm going to sing the song, but you can join in the actions with me, and we are going to enter the world of story. Catch a star, sail the sea, sit beneath the green leaf tree, light the fire in your heart. Now my story's ready to start. And by this time, everybody's listening quietly, looking at me, and I've gathered everybody in. Picture books. Picture books happen in 2 ways. They happen in the text and the pictures, and very often the pictures will tell you all sorts of things that the text won't. I do like to introduce the books with the cover, talk about the author, especially if it's me. Oh, look, there's my name on the front of the book. I also have, look, have a little duck here. Oh, look, she's on the front of the book too. So I often do like to use little cuddly toys just to bring little tiny children in. And opening the book, well, in this one, I'm very sorry, but look, the duck's already been, but you can see on my screen, walking on my book. Look, what's all this? And I talk a little bit about, you know, the fronts of books and the nice inside covers till we get into the book itself. And this book actually came about because I used to sing the song 5 Little Ducks in a nursery group. And I would always ask the children where the ducks went on their day out. Because one of the things I do like to use picture books for is lots of speaking and listening and hearing the children's things that they want to talk about, like in Owl Babies, you know, we don't live in a tree, do we? We live in houses, and we don't eat sort of worms and things like that. So I love to use picture books as real talking points with children. You find out where all the ducks go, actually, on their days out, in case you've ever wondered. Because that's the other thing I like to do in stories, is I like children to think about, if they were telling a story, what they would do next. And my lovely book, I have a lovely illustrator called Roberta Angeletti from Italy. It's got a flap. Ooh. Now, I do like flaps. I don't know about you. They spill such suspense into a book. And this little duck, here he is. I would sing the song, 5 little ducks went swimming one day over the hills and far away. And of course, all the children will join in because they all know it. Mummy duck said quack, 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 but only 4 little ducks came back. But look, the other little duck, where did he go? Lift the flap if you want to know. So lots of lovely repetition, lots of responses. If they're in the book that you are, really make the most of them. And you want to know where he's going. The first little duck's actually going to the park. So, and then I asked the children what they do in the park, and we end up singing Seesaw, Marjorie Daw. So this book will actually take about 45 minutes. Dear Zoo takes about 40 minutes, because before I do Dear Zoo, I set it up with the children. Oh, I haven't got an animal. Have any of you got any animals? And they tell me about their pets. Then we're going to write a letter. Let's write a letter to the zoo. So I use lots of little drama role play. And we post it, and then we wait for the knock at the door. And only then do I open the book. So I do like to set my books, my picture books, very often in a context, and then unpack. I mean, Dear Zoo is great, isn't it? So with the elephant, he's too big, so we have to try and push the elephant in the house, and we can't get him in the house, and we have to put him back in the box. And then the giraffes can't stand up, and lions, anything that was going to bite you. Oh yes, I love to share a book around and you can be bitten if you want to. If you don't want to be eaten, then that's all right too. So I love to really unpack pictures and extend text when I'm using picture books. And then I have my lovely longer picture books. I use these two books all the time with years 1 and 2. But because I'm a storyteller, I put the books down and I just tell the story. And I invite the children to be my illustrators for me. What are you going to see? They've got little rhymes in, it's got craft in. And this is the end of Lau Lau, when my little old lady has been kidnapped by the evil emperor, taken to the tower, and she makes beautiful paper cuts. And the emperor wants her to turn her paper cuts into jewels, which she can't. And here she is locked all alone in the cold tower at the top of the mountain. The guards are warming their hands at the bottom of the fire. But something was watching. Something was always watching. The ice dragon who lived at the top of the tower. Tonight he knew that something was wrong, and uncurling his giant scaled body from his bed of snow, he flew out over the land. He flew over the tiny villages, all tucked up for the night. He flew over the towns where people were still hard at work. He flew over the emperor's palace. Then, turning back towards the mountain, he saw the emperor himself galloping towards the tower. Round and round the tower, the ice dragon flew, the anger rising in his chest as he saw Lau Lau lying helpless on the floor of the tower. Ice cold breath streamed from his nostrils and froze the blood of the guard standing at the bottom of the tower. And the emperor fell from his horse, dazed, unable to move. And then the dragon very gently picked up Lau Lau and carried her up above the clouds so that she was safe from the wicked emperor, safe from the guards, safe from anything that would ever hurt her ever again. And Lau Lau's paper cuts billowed around in the ice-cold air, where they turned into snowflakes, twinkling and sparkling in the moonlight. So storytelling allows you to really make amazing eye contact with children. And you can build in lots of rhymes. I mean, think of the 3 little pigs. The 3 little pigs tells itself. You start that with children and they will be huffing and puffing before you've gone anywhere at all. So if you haven't had a go at telling a story without a book, have a go. And I think it will really help you and release you in actually reading all books, because you'll get used to really acting things out. So I have quite busy sessions, and then I do have quieter sessions. And one of the things I'm looking for in the session is how the children are listening. So when I'm reading out loud, I really try and listen to myself and how my voice is sounding as well. And I think it's quite hard, isn't it? When you hear a recording of your voice, you go, oh my God, that was horrible, oh, I sound really weird. But then you watch children listening to you. And I always think at the end of the day, the children are the key. The children are the people who are listening. And you can see them getting drawn in more and more into story. So I felt I should just read from a book for you, because I do it quite a lot, but I also don't do it quite a lot in story times. So this book is set in Brixton, where I live. And I imagined, because actually this is my secret self, that actually I fly racing dragons. And in fact, there are dragon caves underneath Lambeth Town Hall, where I live. So this is the young girl, Joanna, who's named after my daughter. And she's waiting for her older brother, Aaron, to come back from his after-school football club. And he is late. And she is fed up. Joanna looked up at the clock on the town hall to check the time. 5:10. If Aaron hadn't come in 5 minutes, she'd go home without him. She stood, staring up at the clock, as if by watching she could make the giant hands move. Suddenly a movement caught her eye. Something on one of the statues near the clock. That's a large pigeon, thought Joanna. She looked again, more carefully this time. It was far too big for a pigeon. What was it? And then all she could do was stare up at the clock tower in utter amazement. Crawling quickly down the wall straight towards her was a small silver dragon. The dragon stopped and looked at her intently with its bright eyes shining like two small bonfires. Joanna stared back. She could see herself reflected in the dark pupils, only instead of her school uniform, she seemed to be wearing a fitted leather jacket, the sort motorbike riders wear. The dragon's face was now so close. She could feel its hot breath on her cheeks. She reached up to touch it, and suddenly thoughts like small silver sparks were flickering across her mind. Dragonflyer, they cried, and were gone, only to return brighter and faster. And now her head was spinning, and she had to lean against the wall of the town hall to stop herself from falling. She looked up just in time to see a woman scoop the dragon up into the thick folds of a blanket. It all happened so quickly that it took Joanna a couple of seconds to realise that the woman with the blanket was already disappearing through a side door. Joanna ran after her, but at the same moment she heard her brother calling her, "Jo, wait!" And Aaron came running up. Oh, Mr. Wentworth wanted to sort out all the details for the match tomorrow. Guess who's captain? And then Matt and I needed to discuss tactics. Hey, Joanna, you're not listening. You're right. You look a bit funny. I don't know. I feel a bit strange, replied Joanna, adding silently, "You might too if you just discovered a dragon waiting for you," because she was sure it had been waiting for her. That's my stories, really. I love telling stories, full stop. And I hope I know you two do as well. I'm hoping all these other lovely names love it too. There we go.
Thank you so much, Margaret. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. That was so enticing and some beautifully demonstrated everything that we kind of talked about. So that was brilliant. I think something that I was thinking about as well is that often we associate that kind of enthusiastic reading aloud and that kind of delivery with early years or with Key Stage 1. But actually, you know, what you demonstrated there is that it's so important to keep that going through those longer fiction books and non-fiction as well, right the way up into the end of year 6, especially as I think, you know, we think, okay, well, the children get a little bit more self-conscious of their own kind of reading aloud. So I think it's up to us to really keep modeling it and keep saying, actually, this is not just for little kids. This kind of storytelling is for everyone, even for adults. So thank you so much. We have got just a couple of minutes for questions. If anyone does have a question for Margaret or Suzanne or myself, please do pop them in the chat. I'll give everyone just a sec if they've got any questions. But if you haven't, thank you so much for joining us today. A huge, huge thank you to Suzanne and Margaret for sharing your wisdom with us. And if you enjoyed this event, there are lots more coming up from the English Association. So please do check out our website, become a member if you're interested in all the kind of journals and things as well. And yes, we hope to see you all again soon. We'll just wait a minute or so for questions and then we will wrap up. No, I think we were all good. We must have just answered everyone's questions so well in what we said. If you do have any questions, I'm sure you can email the English Association and they'd be happy to put you in touch with us or to answer any questions themselves. So I will say goodbye. We will say goodbye. Thank you so much again for joining us. Have a lovely evening. Enjoy the sunshine. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.